more that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're coming to you on all of our streaming platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Welcome to this very somber discussion. I'd like to preface this live with a couple of things. We're going to engage in some discussion and analysis about crisis de-escalation. We're not going to have a discussion that is partisan or that is an incident breakdown, and I'm not going to provide video with regard to, a second-by-second analysis of psychomotor movement. What does this mean? That's been already very, very covered. I'd like to have a different conversation today. It's been on my mind a lot today that I was going to do this, and I enter this topic with some confidence and some trepidation because of its incendiary nature. My intent is to raise awareness and consciousness about some principles that we can derive their importance by reviewing the tragedy of Alex losing his life. And I'm also not going to render opinion about the behavior of anybody. I'm only going to discuss what we would refer to as specific behavioral observation and what we can derive from the behavior. I'm not going to go to intent. I'm only going to talk about how the nervous system works to some degree in relationship to the event in its entirety. So welcome all. Thank you for coming for this discussion. I'd like to start it with sharing a personal anecdote, a prototypical experience I had that has helped shape the way I view these kinds of events. I had a responsibility every day for about 18 months prior to the formation of the psychiatric emergency response team to support in real time one of our state's, let's say, most violent people in its care and custody, because they had an extensive history of violent and assaultive behavior toward other consumers and workforce members. This person had hurt an extraordinary number of people, was responsible in their behavior for a very high number of injury claims, and we were managing that person's care and custody essentially with constant restraint and restriction, to the visibility of the regulatory authorities, who said, you have to find another way of managing this person because this is also not working in terms of conditions of participation to get, accreditation, human rights, that kind of thing. So I want to describe the role this way. It was like being three different kinds of protective agent. Imagine if you were a protection professional for another human being. There's the protectee and the protector. Imagine this for a moment. Imagine that you had the core responsibility of protecting your protectee from reprisals or retaliation from other people. So you're at contact distance with your protectee, you're moving about your day, you have a responsibility to protect this person from violence and assault from other people. You also had the responsibility to protect other people from the violence and assaultive behavior of this person in real time. And you had to protect yourself from violence and assault that may be administered toward you as the protector from the protectee. Imagine that for one moment. You had to account for protecting the protectee. You had to account for protecting others from the protectee. And you had to protect yourself from the protectee. And you had to do that with constancy, 8 hours a day. I did this for a long time. It was an extraordinary set of responsibilities because I'm managing my own nervous system. I'm monitoring the nervous system of the person I'm caring for, and I'm monitoring the environment and the potential nervous system of people that might present risk or threat to the protectee or to me. It was an extraordinary responsibility that was part of, I would say, my journey to some serious drinking, which I eventually stopped in 2018. The reason I bring that up is because I want to raise your awareness about what your own nervous system has to account for when engaging in circumstances and conditions that present risk. Now, I was well trained. I had a lot of natural talent. I had a lot of physical ability. And I was very interested in going to work every day with the commitment to coming home in the same condition I went to work. So I also engaged in personal practices that allowed me to do that. And I'm happy to say that following that detail, we were able to intervene with this person who was particularly violent in real time when they felt the impulse. And we were able to provide de-escalation in real time so this person would choose something other than assaultive behavior. Our operational definition in this discussion for de-escalation is to do things that are not inflammatory to the nervous system of another human being. Let me say that again. To de-escalate means to avoid doing things that are inflammatory to another person's nervous system and instead do things that are either neutral or have a neurobiological effect on someone else's parasympathetic nervous system so that they are inclined to calm down. That's the de-escalation context. All right, so now let's take a look at this incident with Alex Pretti and what led up to his tragic death. And for the sake of this discussion, I want to depersonalize it some. Rather than bringing up images of identity and picture and color of clothing and the incident itself, I want to do something a little more diffuse, and there's a reason for that. I want to really underscore the principles rather than the people. Let's refer to Alex in this discussion as human A. And we're going to refer to the people that were working in support of Immigration and Customs Enforcement as human I. I'm just going to keep it real simple. Human A and human I. Human A was an emergency department nurse. Human A probably had or has, if we're talking about it theoretically, experience in managing high stress moments in the administering of medical care. This means that there is capacity and training to regulate nervous system to some degree to administer complex thought and skill in that setting. Human A is also someone who has a desire to express themselves in an environment that is particularly observable as featuring very, very highly aroused people all over the place. Very, very highly aroused people all over the place. People engaging in protest behaviors and people engaging in enforcement behaviors. People presenting high emotional arousal all over the place. Human A wants to go to this environment and express themselves. And in the existential sense, on its face, that seems entirely noteworthy. Human A goes to the event prepared to engage people verbally, capture video, and human A wants, to some degree, to have self-protection tools on them. Carry a firearm. I'm going to be the first one to say in this video, I carry a firearm very frequently. I also go to a lot of schools and consider a great deal of the responsibility associated with carrying it. My right to carry it where I live is not enough. I have a responsibility the moment I choose to carry it. And there are very restrictive conditions in which I can use it. It provides equity when there's an inequity of force that I might be presented with out in the world in protecting my family and myself. I take very seriously the responsibility that comes along with carrying it, not only in terms of its use, but in terms of its visibility to others should it become visible. No different than if someone living with homelessness has a machete strapped to their backpack, and this happens a lot, and they walk into the lobby of a shelter. This can be a very stimulating event. One's ability to self-regulate under a specific set of conditions does not mean that all of that self-regulation is transferable. We just watched Alex Honnold climb Taipei 101 in Taiwan. This was a masterclass in self-regulation. And Alex has been quite outspoken about what he does to manage fear and his own nervous system arousal. Is that transferable if Alex decided to work at a nuclear reactor facility tomorrow? Would Alex remain as calm in that environment, walking in there, having to don the appropriate PPE, constantly, being exposed to radiation? Does he have the knowledge to be in there and be self-regulated? No, the people who work in those environments are pretty well trained through experience and content, educational content, to operate in that setting. So let's go back to Minneapolis. Human A, by all accounts, is a regulated, educated human being that goes to an event where there's extraordinary high arousal, has experience in managing their emotional state more than likely, and is carrying a protective set of tools, maybe a pocket knife, a firearm, more than likely because they understand the risks involved in going. It's entirely reasonable on its face. Human I is working in an environment where they are constantly exposed in their enforcement duties to risk and behaviors that animate their own nervous system. People hurling insults, people presenting aggressive behavior, experiences where people engaged in protest are not responsive to their presence or their verbalizations to create space or give way or stand down. I have been in settings where verbal prompts have been met with dismissal, insult, resistance, The messaging that this provides my nervous system is that I'm ineffectual. It presents messaging to my nervous system that I may be at risk. It presents messaging to my nervous system that I'm in danger of not fulfilling my duties, or I'm in danger of losing my own life or being injured. I'm constantly surrounded with risk. I've worked in environments, as I mentioned earlier, in a very prototypical example of how hard that is to do. Your nervous system is constantly being messaged risk and threat. Nobody is engaged in the salutary effects of behavior that reduce nervous system arousal. Everybody is engaged in behavior that is arousing. Human A, who by all accounts is not aggressive, but engaging in recording behavior, maybe even could be described as protective behavior of another human being, enters an environment where everyone is at high emotional arousal. There's risk involved. Everyone's nervous system is highly, highly aroused. There's risk involved in that. That is the work environment of psychiatric settings, very frequently in acute care settings across the country. Those are the conditions of prisons and jails. Those are the conditions of emergency evaluation and treatment centers for 72 hours that are fully secure. People, for any number of reasons, are already heavily tilted toward high limbic system activity. Imagine for one moment if we could have an fMRI on every single human being in a 4-block area around where that incident occurred. Do you think we would be seeing a lot of regulated neocortex electrochemical behavior that the fMRI is observing? Or do you think we would see a lot of limbic system activity in human beings? We know that limited diversity of thought and expression is offline. Limited diversity of thought and expression, when that is active, wider diversity of thought and expression in the neocortex is offline or diminished. We're looking at a lot of people who are seeing the world through a risk lens. Human A is engaging in video capture while witnessing someone presenting extraordinarily highly emotional, arousing behavior in human I, capturing video. What kind of messaging do you think that sends to the nervous system of human I? When I'm on video, and have been countless times doing this work, I can tell you the things that I'm aware of are not making a mistake, avoiding shame, feeling embarrassed, feeling fear. This is what video capture does today for responders very frequently. And I don't think enough people talk about that. So human A and human I have what's known as an aversive interaction. There are goals and expectations that human A have, and there are goals and expectations that human I have. And nobody is engaging in behavior that by its design is intended to be non-inflammatory. We have two people, if this were a vacuum, this is a situation that's inspiring a theoretical discussion. We have two people engaging in non-salutary behavior toward one another. Are they both within their rights to do what they're doing? The argument could be made that they're coming from that place. Whether or not they are actually doing it, we can leave that aside for now. But the argument can be made that in terms of exercising their rights, that's there. Is that enough? Is it merely enough that one has the right to do their job, that one has the right to protect themselves? Can those two things coexist? Of course they can. But people are not engaging in salutary behavior with one another. They're engaging in aversive behavior with one another. Add additional stimulation to that. High volume, unusual noise, screaming, alarms, a lot of visual stimulation that the great Tony Blauer would talk about at length in terms of suddenness and speed and what that does to the nervous system, and particularly the startle flinch impulse. There are people startle flinching all over the place in this environment. And then add to that, in human A, the visibility that occurs with a firearm when they are not engaged in behavior, even using it. There's no touching of it. It becomes visible in the small of their back. Example, a similar example. I, like lots of other drivers, have been pulled over. I want to do things with the officer that's approaching my vehicle that are salutary in nature, that message to their nervous system that I'm not a threat. So I put my hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. And I say things when the officer comes to the window like, officer, I just want you to know that my ID is in my sling bag. There's also a firearm in there. When you're ready, please let me know when I might retrieve it. I don't do that because that's something he deserves. I do that because I want to engage in salutary behavior to de-escalate tension, because I don't want to have to manage high emotional arousal in another human being. I do things that are salutary. I do things that message the nervous system of another human being. There is no risk here. We didn't see that in this situation. It doesn't matter who had what right. What we saw were human A and human I engaged in behavior that was tilting the other direction. And quite frankly, in human I, seriously so. What do you think the presentation of a firearm, whether or not it's in the hand of a person, does to another human being during conditions when there are people trying to establish physical control? Two things can be true at the same time. Alex's loss of life could have been avoided. And in the exercising of a right, there were unintended consequences associated with that choice. That doesn't mean that he deserved it in any way. In the same way, a person coming into a supportive housing environment might have a rusty old K-bar knife. They're not wielding it, they're not swinging it around, but we see it on the belt. This is stimulating to the nervous system. And there are things that your nervous system are going to do when it is presented with stimulation that activates the sensory thalamus and the amygdala. Whoa. People don't carry knives in here. This is a supportive housing environment. I'm close to some kind of risk. Now, there are 100 ways to mitigate that. Experience, training, stress inoculation. Those skills learned in one context are not always transferable to another, unless your training is oriented towards something more essential, like what Tony does with knowing fear, how fear works. Whether it's a knife, a punch, a chemical agent, there's a different approach to that. There are a lot of people who aren't trained in that approach. Be that as it may, there are non-salutary effects in this incident occurring between human beings. Nervous systems are not beneficiaries in that moment of self-regulating things. Why? They're being constantly fanned, like spritzed. Imagine if your limbic system were a fire, and stimulation like that is a 32-ounce spray bottle of gasoline, and you're just spraying it on one another. That's what this interaction was like, witnessing it. And was it equitable in that? No. No, there wasn't. It wasn't human A engaging in more than human I. Human A engaged, I would say, in less than, for sure, from at least what I could see. But this situation is tantamount to many, many other situations that don't look just like it. Two people who feel strong about their goals and objectives, engaged in aversive interaction with one another, which is non-salutary to the nervous system. So what can we take away from this? If the goal is to de-escalate, with that comes the responsibility to do things that are non-inflammatory. What might have been something that human A could have said when they were initially approached? Officer, I'm filming you. I'm exercising my right to film you. I want you to know that I have a firearm and I'm not here to interfere. I just want to capture the video. That would have been something that helped provide awareness and salutary effect to a responder. Maybe a likelihood of that. I know I certainly appreciated it when I was given foreknowledge, and I know that officers are very appreciative when I let them know that I'm armed. It's deferential. What might have been a way that human I could have verbalized themselves to human A? I see you're filming. It's the right for you to film. We're trying to secure a scene. Stand over there and film all you like. That way, you reduce your risk of being harmed. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Now, you might say that's unreasonable. We're talking about likelihoods here. We want to maximize likelihoods of safe outcomes and reducing risk. We have to engage in things that are de-escalatory in nature, not escalatory in nature. In order to do that, we have to have some awareness over what we're doing rather than standing firmly in the exercising of our rights without any sensitivity to the world around us. Asserting one's self without considering the larger implications of what that assertion might generate or create is not de-escalatory. There are times when being assertive in certain environments does not present one with risk. There are other times it does. I need to assert myself to establish control of this scene. This is a duty and responsibility of mine. I have to break this fight up. I also have to manage 28 other people around me. I have to manage a lot of risk. I'm going to say and do things that try to create that outcome for me. I'm over here, human A. I want to exercise my right to observe. I want to exercise my right to express myself. But I also don't want to be caught up in a jam because I'm volunteering to go into an environment where everyone is emotionally aroused. So I may have to let someone know that I'm armed. You don't have to agree. I'm very comfortable in my own skin with the lens through which this event can be viewed if we're talking about de-escalation. Not talking about who was right and wrong, the degree to which someone was wrong. We're talking about crisis de-escalation. And what we learned from this event is that we watched human beings do things that were non-salutary. And when things are non-salutary and all we do is inflame the other nervous system of another human being, our righteousness in our position will not prevail. I posted a video the other day about outrage. Outrage isn't working because outrage, when it's presented, does things to the nervous system of another human being where your message that motivates the outrage is lost. Was human A outraged? More than likely. Was human I outraged for their own reasons? More than likely. Can two antithetical things be true at the same time? Absolutely. What's the common theme that we witnessed in this event? Nobody was doing anything salutary. You know, I have a colleague and friend, Bob Scales, who created a significant data set on use of force incidents. And in all of the use of force incidents carried out by public safety professionals that were determined to be inappropriate, the most common denominator in every one of those events was personal dysregulation of the responder. Personal dysregulation, emotional dysregulation of the responder. If we allow ourselves to become dysregulated, we lose entitlements to expect safety. This is hard, particularly when you feel passionate about something. I want to be heard. I have energy to be heard. I have a right to be heard. Responsibility comes with that. We live in environments where it's more than just me, more than just you. I need to account. I didn't say take ownership of. I need to account for that. I need to account for how my expressions of myself, however righteous, are impacting other human beings. And if I'm witnessing feedback that is presenting my nervous system the message that I might be facing more risk, I better do something to offset that quickly by reducing that threat. This is my take on it. It was tragic. It was awful to witness. There's an extraordinary number of people out there with high emotional arousal. We need to do things that are salutary and that do not have an ill effect on another person's nervous system. That includes how we even physically intervene. Yes, there's a difference between engaging someone physically to establish control when you're in control of yourself and when you're not in control of yourself. I have done it and lived it, and so have countless of my colleagues. There is a difference even in controlling another human being against their will, in doing it from a self-regulated state or a dysregulated state. And quite frankly, there's nobody more qualified to talk about that piece of it than Tony Blauer, hands down. Because you can engage in physical intervention, self-regulated all day long when you know how to do it. And that's a whole other conversation. Yes. Yeah, Greg, thank you for that. Great comments here. And I appreciate that. I appreciate these comments very, very much. The investigation will reveal what it reveals. What I wanted this situation to inspire was a narrower discussion about de-escalation. All of it was very unfortunate. I'd like to thank those of you who have come to be with me in real time here and to grapple with this together. We're in desperate need of grace and intervention in Minneapolis and in other places in our world right now. I hope that you'll join me in your own way in prayer and supplication for that. And to do things as much as possible that are salutary, even if you feel outraged. Thank you so very much. Take good care.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
More that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.